Valar Morghulis.
Valar Duhai.
Welcome to Southsidewesteros, where we explore the world of Game of Thrones. From the Fist of the First Man to the catacombs of the Red Keep, no secrets will be safe from us. Enter and forever be changed.
There is only one God, and his name is Death. And there is only one thing we say to death. Not today.
Hello and welcome back to Southsidewesteros. I'm your host, D. Paul, your master of whispers, and I thank you for joining me again as we journey through the world of George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones. This week's journey lands us all the way to the shores of Dorne, where we look into the life of Prince Oberyn. We will be focusing on Prince Oberyn as portrayed by Pedro Pascal on the Game of Thrones TV show. However, we will reference some of his character from the book. However, I do feel like while he made a heavy impact, they could have squeezed a little more out of Prince Oberyn. But the 7 episodes that he was in impacted the show tremendously. It set up the escape of Tyrion. It exposed Tywin's disdain for his son, as well as Cersei's. It showed Jaime's love for Tyrion and what he was willing to do to save his brother, even going against his own happiness. And then, of course, it showed Prince Oberyn's depression and seething anger at what happened to his dear sister, Oberyn Martell, at the hands of the Mountain. Now, I find it interesting that they inject Prince Oberyn here, being as though Dorne, while not in open rebellion, really isn't a part of the Seven Kingdoms since the sack. And I find it funny that there was never a war floated to bring them back, which shows the fear and respect that Westeros has for Dorne. They even reference this later on when they talk about the Dornish and how they were the only ones to stand up against the dragons. So this alludes to Dorne's fighting prowess and their military, which contradicts what we see later on down the line when Dorne forms the alliance with the Tyrells and how the power structure is so easily overthrown. So I do believe there is some miswriting there because on one hand, they are standing up to the 7 kingdoms, 6 really, but in the other hand, they're able to be overthrown by the whims of quote-unquote Sands, the bastards of the Dornish Isles. So that part of writing, I think, was sloppy. I thought they could have stretched it out a little more and really gave you more insight into Dorne and the politics and the people. But you really don't get a look at the Dornish people. Oberyn and Ellaria are the only ones that, I mean, even his brother, you barely scratch the surface on who he is. You just paint him as a inept cripple who you view as not a man. And the disrespect that she has, and I get it. You're sad over Prince Oberyn's death, and spoiler alert. Yeah, you're sad over Prince Oberyn's death, and you're angry, and you want them to pay, but the disrespect towards a monarch, I just don't feel that would have played, especially in Dorne, whose society is likened to a Middle Eastern society. And if that's the case, that definitely wouldn't have played. But, for that sake, we'll do a podcast later on Dorne itself, break down the politics and all the events that happened, and maybe integrate the book and see where the writers of the show could have pulled more from the book. But this is on Prince Oberyn, and I'm not going to go into what happened prior to his appearance. We're going to talk about those 7 episodes, which started in the Two Swords and ended with the Mountain and the Viper. Now, we first meet Prince Oberyn. He's, I guess, this is customary, especially back then, for the political alliances that when there was a wedding of a well-to-do upper crust or even a royal, all the other houses would show up as a show of respect, but also as a way to network. You're networking. Remember, you communicate by ravens. So you can't just make a call or send a text. The text might take a week or more. And then you have to wait another week or more to get the response of that text, if they even got it. So this is an opportunity to not only catch up with past dignitaries you may have dealt with, but to meet new ones that have risen to power in the meantime. Also, you can strengthen, weaken, or propose new alliances at these events. So it's not uncommon. So to see him show up, even with his disdain for the Lannisters, it is customary for him to show up. Now, if his brother was not in the wheelchair and almost a paraplegic even, he would have come in his stead. But as a Prince of Dorne, even though his life is one of leisure, sex, and pleasures, as he says, he still has a duty to represent his particular political alliance. And I've said this in the previous podcast that these kings and lords and princes, and yes, while they're royalty, I do look at them as governmental figures. They're CEOs. They're a power structure, and they're the head of the power structure. And you can't just live a life of luxury. You have to make these moves. You have to do the work so that the people feel you are a good leader. You are a good person to follow. We feel safe and comfortable giving you portions of our crop and paying taxes to you and answering your banners when you call them and being a fighter. No. They need to know that I have a good boss. And that's what the trip of Oberyn does. Now, this must be horrible for him. He has to be seething. Now, of course, they show you him and Ilaria, and what they do and how, first place they hit is the brothels and numerous girls and boys. And he has an appetite similar to what is proposed of Tyrion. And he is whetting that appetite as much as he can. But even with the behind the smile, and again, the actor did such a brilliant job of conveying this when he would talk. But you can tell this was an upper crust man. He was taught in all the ways of politics and how to move and shake and how to hold back your true feelings to get something out of your enemy. And especially when he's talking to Tyrion. And you'll see this later on when he's conveying to Tyrion that he actually met him before as a baby, that there's a bit of sorrow. He feels sorry for Tyrion, but he respects him as well for being the diminutive figure that he is and still, in a sense, standing up to all these huge figures around him who would have rather him just curled up and died. He could have taken his pot of gold and gone off somewhere and not embarrassed his father, but no. And it wasn't just about embarrassing his father. He wanted it. He wanted it. He loved it. He's referenced this. I love this. I'm good at it. I'm good at outthinking these people. I'm good at outwitting them. And Oberyn sees this in Tyrion, and he respects it. And so that made him open up to Tyrion a little more than he would have normally. But even when he was opening up with him, you can feel the pain, shame, anger that is behind this man. And this man is a Prince of Dorne. Everything within his eyesight is his. His reach goes west of Westeros. So for a man with that type of power that could snap his fingers and 1,000 people can die, for him to have to suffer the indignity of knowing the people that killed his sister, and even though this is how it's done, this is how thrones are overthrown and things like this happen, I still know what you did to my sister and my nieces and nephew. And I had to sit here in Dorne and know that not only justice was not served, but that you're prospering. It must have been a living hell for this man. A man that's so proud, that's so prideful, that he would not hire a lackey to face his enemy. He's going to do it. A man of advanced age, 40s, fighting a man not only in his younger, maybe late 20s, early 30s, but freakishly big, freakishly strong, and freakishly fast, with a body count that could probably fill a cemetery. This is the measure of that man. Now, His liberal attitudes towards sexuality aside, for the most part, this man has led a life of leisure. Being the prince, he's the second, third in command. He doesn't really have any job or duty if he doesn't want to. His blood is his job or duty. So his life has been spent dedicated to fun, but also the fighting arts. And in the last 20 years, and when this happened, he was a young man. He was probably in his 20s. So as a young man full of fire, he wanted to start a war. And he was forced by his older brother to stand pat. So for 20 years, all he's had to think about was the mountain and Tywin Lannister. For 20 years, all he had to do was work on his body, work on his fighting art, and just wait for his moment. Wait for the opportunity to exact revenge from my family. Now, Tyrion meets him outside of King's Landing. He finds that Oberyn is already gone. He's nowhere to be found because he's got needs. He's a Prince of Dorne, but he is Oberyn Martell, and he's got things to see and people to do. That's the nicest way I can put it. That's what he has to do, and he's ready. And this is something that Tyrion has been known to do. He does it in King's Landing, so he respects it. So Tyrion heads over to Littlefinger's brothel, finds Ellaria. They're enjoying it. They're brokering deals for people, and they are wearing out the workers of Littlefinger. Now, the fun is cut short because in the next room from Oberyn, there happen to be Lannister men singing the Rains of Castamere, which sent Oberyn into a rage. A rage. Of course it would. I haven't been here for 20 years. Killed my sister. I'm in here, and the first thing I hear are these bastards singing the Rains of Castamere. Are you kidding me? So he goes over there, initiates a fight, ends it quickly because this man is a killer. And then he gets into his talk on why he came to the capital. Tyrion, of course, being the guy he is, knows the story because he's an intelligent man and could pretty much assess and assume that Oberyn's here for some smoke. He's here to get it in. He wants Gregor Clegane, the bannerman who raped and murdered Elia Martell, split her down the middle with a sword, slaughtered her children. And he warns Tyrion at that moment that the Lannisters aren't the only ones who pay their debts. But now, let's think about this. Let's think about it for a moment. Tyrion is one of the most intelligent characters on the show. In the words of Sansa, at one point I thought you were the most clever man alive. Cleverest man alive is what she said? The cleverest man alive. Tyrion knows what Oberyn wants to do. He has no love for the mountain. He's a savage. He's beneath him. But he also has no love for King Joffrey. So whatever trouble that Oberyn may cause, the only victims will be people he doesn't like. So I think Tyrion just lets it go. There's no television, no internet. Let's see what happens. Now fast forward to the wedding. Oberyn is there, where he meets Tywin and Cersei. He introduces Ellaria. Cersei, in all her wonderful snobbiness, points out that she's a bastard. Tywin, of course, knows what he's there for and is assessing the situation like only Tywin Lannister can, while finding the time to be disappointed in his daughter's lack of vision for trying to instigate this man who was already a second away from starting war. And he knows at that point that they're broke, and he can't afford another war at this time. Now, I love how Oberyn and Cersei have a moment. Now, Cersei doesn't seem to have a disdain for Oberyn. I don't know if you caught that. And remember that Oberyn and Cersei spent time together when they were younger. Now, think about that. Cersei and Oberyn, they didn't allude to this. This was a very small part in the show, but I picked up on it. Now, Oberyn and Cersei spent time in their formative years. One would think preteen to teen. And with Oberyn being the type of guy he was, over-sexualized, a very sensual creature, I'm sure he was like that as a child. And Cersei, her famously ravenous nether regions, are known all over Westeros, and from what Jaime has alluded to, they were bumping uglies from a very young age. So I think the cattiness that she had towards Ellaria was a jealousy. Hear me. There was a jealousy there. I'm jealous and you're beneath me. Because Cersei, at her base, you could say whatever you want about her, but she's selfish. She's selfish and everything is for her. So one would stand to reason that if she was with this man, even if it was when they were young, he is hers to play with and no one else's. And my theory is further proven when they then start to talk. Because at some point, Tywin goes off, Sand goes off, and it's just those two. And even though Cersei always has this very brooding face, this is one of the few moments that she was vulnerable on the show. When she asks about Myrcella, her daughter, the pureness that still resides in her heart, the sweet girl. She's not mean and vindictive like Joffrey. She's not a fool like Tommen. And she's not battle-hardened like Cersei. She is the only thing left, the only part of Cersei that is pure. And she needs to know, is she okay? And he tells her, we don't make war. We don't hurt little girls in Dorne. And while there was a split second of relief because she believed him, again, watch the Cersei and Oberyn interaction, even though they're very small, is very telling. While I don't think she loves this man, she likes this man. And she wants to believe this man. But life has taught her that this game is vicious. And kids are part of it because, as she says, little girls are hurt all over the world. So now Oberyn's in attendance. The wedding goes on as planned. Joffrey is charmingly, disgustingly snooty and mean to Sansa and his uncle. And he gets poisoned. He dies at his own wedding. And of course, the realm reacts the way they should react. If you're not sad, you better look sad because that means you were in on it. Because we're looking for someone to blame. Now, Oberyn and Ellaria are at the brothel. Seems this is where they're staying. And he's doing what he's doing. I think people are starting to grow a little tired of them, but they're paying. So your wish is our command. Then we enter Tywin Lannister. Now, what I find funny about this is Tywin calculated that Oberyn wouldn't try anything on him. So he came in by himself, and they referenced this in their exchange. And it was a wonderful exchange between Pedro and Charles Dance. I think they really captured the essence of, we're both diplomats. We both have to have diplomacy, but we both don't like each other. But we need each other for the combined futures of our kingdoms. So while I offer no apologies, and while I will never admit that I told the mountain to do it, I will offer you a scrap and give you the mountain if you give me what I want, which is, of course, to make Tyrion guilty. You make Tyrion guilty, then he can kill him or send him to the wall or whatever. But my embarrassment is gone. Per the backroom deal he and Jaime made, Jaime is now going to go to Castle Rock. He's going to get married and push on the Lannister name, right? Now, Tywin understands that with the Greyjoys in open rebellion, and the realm is really falling apart under Joffrey. It was falling apart under Joffrey, and it's not going to do any better under Cersei. He understands he has to get Dorne back in the fold. Now, with a guy like Tywin understands that Dorne is not going to just come back in. Not after what you've done. But maybe if I give Clegane to this guy, let him do what he wants, then maybe we can come back in together, and then I can get the Seven Kingdoms back, or at least a strong 6, and we can destroy the Iron Isle. Now, following the coronation of Tommen, Oberyn takes some time to write a bit of poetry in the garden to his 5th daughter, Elia, named after his sister. All right, Cersei comes in again, and this is where they really have the conversation about Myrcella and is she good and how is she doing, and he talks about his daughters and how she plays with them. And Cersei is a little different at this point because she's kind of looking at him. But again, I feel she believes him. I feel there is something more between he and Cersei. And he is having a hard time alluding to that because of his anger. But there's a softness that he has when dealing with Cersei. Now, maybe this is because she's royalty. Maybe this is because she's another upper crust royal. But I tell you, and I want you to go back and you look at those scenes again. And then inbox me. Come to the Southsidewesteros Instagram. Gmail us. Let us know. And we'll have further discussions on this. I would love to do an entire podcast just on the relationship between Cersei and Oberyn. So Oberyn takes his place now at the small council meeting. Tywin brings him in. You have Mace Tyrell there. They kind of talk about the Unsullied. They talk about Daenerys. All these political things. I noticed that Varys is very interested in Prince Oberyn. Very interested. And this will come into place later when you find out he's been working for the other side. But it must be, the Essos connection or Volantis collection. You never know. You never know. But you fast forward during the trial. Prince Oberyn decides to be one of the judges. He listens to all the testimony. And if you look at Prince Oberyn's face, he calls BS on all of it. I feel this man is a very good judge of character. And I think he knows Tyrion didn't do it. He absolutely knows Tyrion didn't do it because Tyrion's too intelligent to have done that and allow himself to be caught. Just like his father knows he didn't do it, but he sees an opportunity. He saw Joffrey taken out. It's an opportunity to put Tommen in place and get rid of this waddling shame who killed his mother to enter the world. Oberyn knows this. And part of Oberyn wants to just put the screws to Tywin because he knows Tywin gave that order, but he has to hold his tongue for right now. So he goes and visits Tyrion in his cell after Tyrion demands a trial by combat. The second time in the series that he does that. And he talks to him because when he visited, again, referencing as children, when Oberyn and Elia were told stories of the Lannister monster. So again, perhaps maybe Elia, as a young child, had a crush on Jaime. And even though Jaime's never been with anybody but Cersei, maybe in the words of the hip-hop generation, she almost got that jump. But he tells him during the visit to Castle Rock, again, they spent a lot of time by themselves. And Cersei showed Tyrion with great ceremony to Oberyn and Elia. And Oberyn tells Tyrion that he saw no monster, just a baby, no tail, large head, no gnashing teeth, nothing. And his sister was angry then that he killed their mother, and she cruelly assaulted Tyrion until Jaime stopped her. This is the beginning of when Oberyn began to feel sorrow for Tyrion and the life that he was born into because he knew the people he was around. And they go back and forth and they talk, and then Oberyn finally tells him that he will serve as his champion because up to this point, no one could. Bronn was afraid, quite frankly, for the first time in the series, and Jaime couldn't. Jaime would if he still had both his hands, but he couldn't. And Oberyn decides to be his champion. Now we fast forward, and one has to get into Oberyn's head. For 20 years, he's been waiting for his revenge. For 20 years, he's known the location of his sister and nieces and nephews' killer. And now he's there. He's drunk with the revenge of it. And this was the beginning of the Viper's downfall. He puts on the light armor of Dorne, and he wielded a light spear with a heavy blade. Upon seeing the opponent, Ellaria realizes, wow, this guy's big. And she looks at Oberyn, and at that point she knows. It's not that Oberyn can't beat this guy. It's that Oberyn may not do what's necessary to win because of his anger. Oberyn is defiant. He knows, I'm going to kill this guy. I am going to cut him every which way but loose. But you know what he's doing? Drinking a lot of wine and getting ready to fight one of the most vicious warriors in all of Westeros. But he claims that he drinks before battle all the time, that heavy armor hinders him, and that he is going to win. He promises Ellaria, and he kisses her tenderly and passionately for what we now know would be the last time. Now, the battle starts, and he's jumping around and flipping and dipping and scuba-dooing and everything. And he's engaging Clegane. And he's looking good, but he's taunting Clegane. He's taunting him. And he says, yes, say their names. Say their names. You raped them. You murdered them. You killed them. Say their names. He's poking him. He's stabbing him. He's slashing him. He's jumping around. He's flipping. You murdered her. You killed her children. Now, the mountain knocks him off his feet a few times, and he even manages to cut his spear in half. But he fails to wound him. Oberyn is fast. Even for a 40-year-old man, he is lightning fast. But anger and wine, and of course, debauchery, take their toll on a body. So he walks over to his squire, gets another spear. Meanwhile, he's wearing him down. He's knocking the helmet off. He's slicing him. He's stabbing him. Finally, he falls. He slashes his feet. He gets him on his back. Clegane is done. Oberyn wins. You look over. Tyrion has a smile on his face. Jaime has a smile on his face. Tywin is scowling. Cersei is scowling. And all he has to do is get his revenge right then and there. Get your revenge. But he doesn't, because he wants the mountain as his final act before he dies to tell him that it was Tywin Lannister that gave that order. It was Tywin Lannister that told you to rape and murder my people. And once you say this out your mouth, I will murder you and then murder him. Now, this was his fatal flaw because Oberyn was a prince, as I've said before. So he understands democracy. He understands diplomacy. He understood that even if he would have yelled that out in court, he could do nothing about it there. He would have had to get back home. He would have had to convince his brother to go to war with the rest of Westeros. So this really was a futile attempt to get... You should have taken the justice that was given you. You should have taken the justice that was on the plate in front of you. But as his life indicated, Oberyn was all about excess. Excess drinking, excess sex, excess partying, excess fun, and I even need to get excess revenge. And because of that, he made a fatal error. The mountain got the jump on him and crushed his head. Now, he did get some small vindication. We'll never know if he heard it or not, but the mountain did admit that he raped and murdered and then crushed her head like that. Then he crushes Oberyn's head, and that's the end of Prince Oberyn. So you see, the Viper was the cause of his own demise. If he had just taken the revenge that was in front of him, he would be here today. However, because of that, a chain of events occurred that caused Dorne to go to war. Interesting. And I would like to remind you that Prince Oberyn was only there for 7 episodes. So this was a powerful 7-episode arc for this man. What do you think you would have done in that situation? Would you have taken the revenge, or would you have done the same? Who knows? 20 years is a long time to have revenge smolder in your being. So psychologically, maybe he couldn't have done anything else other than what he did. Psychologically and emotionally, spiritually, he couldn't hold it together. But I believe he was a great character. I am grateful for how they portrayed him. And in the future, we'll look at how he's portrayed in the book and how he came across on the small screen and where they could have tweaked a little bit. Thank you for listening to Southside Westeros. We look forward to you coming back and visiting us again. If you want to email us, you can reach us at southsidewesteros@gmail.com. You can also reach us at Southside Westeros at both Instagram, Facebook, and Twitch. We're Sswesteros at Cup of Coffee and Twitter. If you want to donate to the program to keep getting this great content, please donate to our Patreon or our Cashapp. Both are Southside Westeros. Valodoharas. And may the Mother bring 7 blessings to you all.